I came from a home where my grandmother opened up the cathedral every morning at 6 o'clock. She was Greek Orthodox and she prayed the whole morning. And when I come back from school and my father picked us up, my father would drop me off at the church to go and pick up my grandmother. And I'd always see her kneeling praying for us. I said to them, I want you to know that there's absolutely nothing that you can do that will keep me from loving you. And my wife said, but how can you say that? I said, but that is what the Father heart of God is. That my father, being Lebanese, the example he always gave me was Johnny the Greek. Michael,
Okay.
look at Johnny the Greek. He's 21 years old. He works from 6 to 8 and he's already got a car and a house. Why must you go to university?
Okay.
You know, if you look at our political system, they always say you must be part of a political party or part of something big. I really believe that one man can make a difference. And I also believe that one with God is a majority. I always laugh at my father, and I don't know if the people know, but we're 5 boys and we all work for my father. But in any case, my father always says, boys, there's one advice I want to give you. Every morning when you wake up, you go out on the terrace of your stoop, you look out and you say, the bank is not my friend. And then you go back inside. You get submissions to the Bella Bill or you get submissions to any of the big bills. The church's voice is not there. Obviously, I believe in the separation of church and state, but not of God and government.
If you were in a position at the GNU to make a shift and to guide them in a direction as to what should South Africa do right now, what would that be? What would you advise them to do right now? Michael Louis, welcome to the In HeinzSight BoldCast. It's so great to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Fantastic being here, Heinz.
I really appreciate it. I have so much respect for you, and we got to meet a couple of years ago and had some fascinating conversations. So it's really a privilege to have you here today, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from you today. Thanks for being here.
No, thank you, Heinz. Really great.
All right. I'd love to. You know, you have an amazing CV, biog, a lot of interesting stories. But before we get to all of that, I'd love to just chat about family first, because I know you are very pro marriage, family, because that's your heart. So please tell us a little bit more about your wife. How long have you been married, and your beautiful children? I'd love to just hear more about that.
Well, Heinz, one of the things that people don't know, I'm Lebanese.
Okay.
And so as a result, you know how the Lebanese are about their families. It's the most. I
actually don't. Please inform me a bit more.
Well, I mean, one of the great things about Lebanese people is family and food.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's Middle Eastern, family is everything.
Yeah.
So I really come from a generational family, understanding the importance of family.
Okay.
It's what I live for, it's what I stand for, it's what I believe in.
Beautiful.
Both from a personal and business point of view.
Okay.
So, so being Lebanese, I always laugh. My wife says that her father, who a lot of people might know, is Jan Picard.
Okay.
He always wanted to say, "Je moet Afrikaner trou." And he's sent her to Stellenbosch University for Mansuk.
Yeah, with that hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in any case, she went there, and but fun enough, all her boyfriends and things were Italians and French. I mean, in any case,
she apparently just had a taste for that area.
No,
okay.
She specializes. She speaks many languages. She speaks 7 languages. So as a result,
that's amazing.
She just always. But in any case, the bottom line is, I'm a Bloemfontein boy.
Okay.
And so she met me and things, and to me it wasn't.
How did your paths cross? If she was at Stellenbosch and you were at Koffsie's,
I had a friend that was in the that wasn't in the Navy, but he was in the Navy and I was in the Army.
Okay.
And he stayed in Cape Town and I was staying in Johannesburg. And one weekend I came to Cape Town and I said, "Listen, I'm coming to Cape Town. Are you in Cape Town?" He said, "Yes."
Yeah.
So I said, "But let's go out one night." And then he says, "Well, unfortunately, this Saturday night that we were going out, He was going out to then not my wife, but he says they're going for home movies.
Okay.
And then he phoned me later and says, "But why don't you come with?" So I met Karen there.
Okay.
And that's how our paths crossed and things.
This episode of the In HeinzSight BoldCast is brought to you by addpay, a values-led fintech company committed to building with purpose. At addpay, we believe business is a calling, a platform to serve people with excellence, innovation, and integrity. We offer smart, scalable payment solutions that empower merchants, simplify transactions, and unlock financial inclusion across Africa. Our foundation is built on Matthew 6:33. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. That means we lead with faith, steward our business with accountability, and trust God as the ultimate provider. We are builders, not just of platforms and partnerships, but of something greater. We believe that when we honor him in how we work, lead, and grow, the impact reaches far beyond the bottom line. addpay, powering commerce with purpose, building for the kingdom.
And was it like a love at first sight kind of thing, or
No,
just interest,
not at
or
all.
nothing?
No, not at all.
Took a while.
No,
Okay.
that really took a while. She really developed to be a great friend. As we met, she actually left for Europe for, I think, 6 or 7 months.
Oh wow.
And so I really think one of the foundations that I really can encourage people when it comes to relationships, especially your life partner, I'm really glad with me particularly, it wasn't love at first sight.
Okay.
Because I think to develop a relationship
From a friendship point of
from
view.
a friendship point of view, you look at different types of things.
Yeah.
And our relationship has definitely improved. I've now been married for 38 years.
38 years. That's amazing. Well done. That deserves a round of applause.
No, but I mean, it is really something that it's really a special relationship.
Wow.
It's we each other's great. The one thing is why I believe that, well, two things why I believe our relationship is strong. And which is also an encouragement to everybody. I really believe that in my sense, my wife had a lot going for her. And the reason why our marriage was strong is because I'm priest and king in our home.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Amen.
And then the second thing.
Just before you go, I'd love to hear the second thing, but just maybe explain what you understand about what you just said, because that's not a term that everyone necessarily understands.
Well, the big thing is that she knows that she sees me in my quiet time praying, and she sees me in my relationship with the Lord, and it brings a sense of sanctity in the home.
Sure.
So, for instance, when things are going bad, we're having a bad run, not in our relationship, but business-wise or thing, then she says, "Michael, don't you want to go and pray in every room?" So it's like there's something different there.
She understands.
But
the
also
authority.
she knows that, when she says she feels that the children, they are struggling or that, she says, "Let's pray about the children." She says, "Michael, won't you pray?" She doesn't say, "I'm going to pray for them." She says, "Won't you pray for them?"
All right. And I'm sure you pray together sometimes
No,
as
we
well.
always pray together.
That's
No,
important.
we definitely do. But I think I really believe that. And maybe I can tell the viewers something very, very special, Hans, is that one of my greatest gifts that I've received, and I say it with great humbleness, is that that I think is my biggest treasure, is that I came from a home where my grandmother opened up the cathedral every morning at 6 o'clock. She was Greek Orthodox.
Wow.
And she prayed the whole morning. And when I come back from school and my father picked us up, my father would drop me off at the church to go and pick up my grandmother. And I'd always see her kneeling, praying for us.
So you had that example.
So the
Beautiful.
power of prayer and sanctity and the power of prayer is something that's in my DNA.
Sure.
I really understand it. I really understand it.
And you can't have that knowledge of the power of prayer if you don't understand faith, because you pray to this God that you believe in, right? Would you say they go hand in hand?
Well, I think the big thing is I am an authentic person. I'm a real person.
Okay.
So I think in my case, seeing my grandmother praying and her talking to me about it in reality, and my father always, when we have meetings, says, "Oh, you must please pray before the meeting," or it's part of our DNA and very real. It's not something that's out there.
Yeah.
It's not out there.
I totally understand. But what I think what I mean is that you wouldn't pray to the God you believe in if you didn't have faith that He can do what you're praying.
Yeah, definitely.
So faith and prayer and knowing the power of prayer go hand in hand.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Faith to me is my everything.
Yeah.
It's my everything. It's my who I am, what I talk about, what I live.
How did you come to faith, and what is it to you?
Yeah, so it was really just very easy, coming from a very spiritual home. And when I say very spiritual, my father was Anglican, so
Okay.
And my mother was Dutch Reformed, and
that's quite an interesting combination.
Very interesting.
Wow.
And my wife is Dutch Reformed.
Okay.
So the big thing is that I always used to see my mother praying, my father always praying things. So it was something very natural and normal in our home. And I promise you, this is how easy it was. I was 18 years old, and I went to a charismatic church with a very good friend of mine, a doctor friend of mine then. And I went to the church, and they made an altar call, and to me it was like, oh, I must just walk forward. And I made a commitment, and I was baptized a week later.
Wow.
So that is 50 years ago. That's
My
a long
goodness.
time.
Yeah.
But really, nothing, that of a it was just very natural, like a duck to water for me.
It was part of your natural progression in life, almost.
Yeah,
to
it
get
was
to that
something
point.
that I can remember it very clearly. I know exactly how it happened, when it happened. Very natural, but something that I really treasure and will ever be grateful. Well, I'm more grateful for the privilege of the home that I've been brought up into.
Yes. Yeah.
I think because my life could have been totally different.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. It sounds like you can attest to this as well. The older I get, the more I hear other people's stories and the brokenness that some have gone through. You realize if you just had two parents who are still together and actually love and like one another, you are very privileged. It used to be the rule. It's now the exception.
Yeah.
And so what I'm hearing you saying as well is that just having that base, parents who are, solid in their marriage, or as solid as they can be, but also they've got the faith undergirding, it plays a big role.
I think it's everything.
Yeah.
Heinz. I think we don't understand the real importance of family.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very understated.
I believe the same thing. And this is something that I feel very strongly about, and it's so important for us to understand, what did God initially mean with marriage and family?
Yeah.
But I think if we understand that, a lot of things will fall into place the way it should be. And since we're talking about marriage and family, isn't that one of the things that's very much under attack in our world at the moment? Would you agree with that?
Oh no, I think it's definitely under attack.
Oh.
I think the big thing is that because I'm a lawyer, is that there's certain frameworks that you need to work towards. And because I'm a constitutional lawyer and a legal person, you need to trust a framework.
Yeah.
That guides you and is your rule book.
Okay.
And so that's why the biblical word is where my base is.
Okay.
That's what I'll fight for, stand for, and represent. And because, that's your recipe for your life, for...
It should be, at least. It's the original idea of everything. Someone like Simon Brace I spoke to recently, he calls it creation ordinances. I love that term. It just puts everything into perspective. And when you understand that, I think it helps you just to, like you say, frame your life, right?
Yeah, I like that's a lovely term, actually. I haven't heard it before. Creation ordinances is that there are certain rules that govern, that are strong. And that's why you've got judicial courts and constitutional courts, because they interpret regulations and ordinances.
Yeah.
And so as a result, I think we've really watered down the importance of family.
Yeah. Would you say there's this? I've read up on this quite a bit. There's a lot of people that contend that one of the biggest crises of our time is fatherlessness. But I think behind fatherlessness, there's actually a lack of knowing God, being in relationship with our Creator and understanding, because would you agree that a man who knows God would understand his role better, at least in life, and fill that position, and one of them is that were he to have children, to be a father. And children who are fathered well typically will end up being well-balanced, good citizens of a country, making a healthy contribution. Would you agree with that assessment?
Look, I had a very, very interesting conversation the other night with a group of peers regarding the topic, the father heart of God.
Yeah.
And I think unless you're a father, you won't understand it. So I made a statement to my children that my wife didn't like, but they were young, in their 20s. I'll tell you now about my two children. But,
all right.
But I said to them, I want you to know that there's absolutely nothing that you can do that will keep me from loving you. And my wife said, but how can you say that, I said, but that is what the father heart of God is.
Amen.
I totally
agree.
I really believe that, and that's why if you haven't got that father heart, how do you love the child like they must do unconditionally? It has to be a real love,
I think the best example of that is the story of the prodigal son.
Yeah, the prodigal son.
The father was completely disrespected, dishonored by the child. The child went crazy, did everything wrong.
Yeah.
But then there's that moment where, I love this line, when he came to himself.
Yeah.
And he knew that at his father's house,
yeah,
even as a slave, he would be treated better than he's going now. And then when he goes, there's this beautiful moment when the father runs, which in Jewish culture was unheard of. The father never does that.
Yeah.
So his love and his passion for his son was so huge. And that's what I'm hearing from you, is that it's that thing of the father heart. Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
Yeah.
For Dave. Well, look, Heinz, I promise you, I'm totally, I don't know if this is a good word, besotted about my children.
Awesome.
I can't tell you I love them.
You've got two.
I've got two. So my daughter, Kiara, she's 32.
Okay.
She's an advocate in Johannesburg, and Michael's 30.
All right.
And he's in New York. But I'm so blessed with my children. But it's not to say that you have such a responsibility as they grow older to just stand your ground, because some are easier in their faith and some aren't so easy in their faith. So just to be a bit transparent, my daughter, being a legal person, we sent her, so she's an advocate, but we sent her to Leiden, which is the Netherlands, to go and do a master's in constitutional and human rights.
I remember you telling me this a couple of years ago.
But whether you like it or not, don't underestimate how quickly they can smokle with the corp of your children.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And so because she's very academic, very thought-provoking and things, she's not like my son that will just accept easily.
Yeah.
Everything is challenged, or everything is
questioned,
and it's much more difficult,
Are you saying that she had a kind of a crisis of faith while she was there?
I wouldn't say a crisis of faith. She committed her life when she was young, but her faith is different.
Okay.
It's not as, like my son would get up in the morning, do his quiet time and do that. She will be softer in her faith.
Okay.
She would be not as bold and outgoing. But she is a woman of faith, if I could say that.
Are both your children married now?
No, none of them are married.
Okay.
It's definitely something that we pray for every day.
Okay.
And that they are really...
I'm sure you'd love to be an opa one day.
I can't even tell you the generational legacy.
Yeah.
But also with that is that I know God has got a plan.
Yeah.
And, I'm just really resting in it. It's something that they are so well established and so well believing in themselves.
Yes.
And I'm very, very proud of the way they've developed.
No, they look like amazing kids. I've seen photos with you guys, and it's just, I can see there's so much love, and they're just beautiful people. you all are.
No, but they're really stunning people.
Yeah, stunning. That's amazing. So you mentioned you're a legal mind. You studied law. That's about the only thing, apart from the fact that we're both South African and love Jesus. That's one thing we have in common. We both studied law.
I know you did.
But we went in different directions.
Yeah.
And there's this amazing thing you went on to do at Harvard College. You studied let me get the right term, privatization and regulatory reform.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah.
So that was... and then from there you went on to in the business world in commercial property development, and you did that for quite some time.
No, so I mean, before I went to Harvard, that I had my political career. So that was
that. Oh, I thought that was first, and then okay.
No, so I studied law.
Yeah,
and then I went to politics and to governance for 10 years. But when I left. Government.
Sorry, did you practice law a while and then?
I didn't really practice that long. I did my articles for 6 years, which was quite a long time, and not for any other reason. I worked and studied at the same time.
Okay.
So that's how I qualified, and I did 1 or 2 years, but I never. It didn't push my trajectories. It didn't give me what I wanted.
What did you want?
I really wanted to make a difference. I really believe.
What did that mean to you exactly?
Well, I believe that it was what is where I can fulfill my purpose and my calling, and where can I feel that my trajectory, my pendulum is pushed to where I feel I'm making a difference. I can't sit and do deeds every day and transfer properties, and I can't go and do collections or drawing up trusts or documents, and then you just give your secretary the document in any case and they draft it. So
this is so important because when we think about, you said the words calling and purpose. So as a young man, you have this sense that, listen, there's something that I need to be doing. Did you have clarity about calling and purpose, or did you just know that it has to be more than what you were doing?
No, I think none of that. I think when you're young, you're really just wanting to find yourself. I think it took me a long time to find myself. When I say find myself, I come from a generational business. I was groomed to take, to work in our family business.
Yeah, you're talking about the Louis Group, the House of Louis, third generation.
Yeah, so I was groomed for that, and it wasn't where I felt called to be, even although I worked there for 3-4 years. And
if you say groomed, were you encouraged to study law within your family, or did you want to go study law and it made sense as well?
No, none of that. No,
all right.
You're asking me all these difficult questions. No, the big thing is that my father, being Lebanese, the example he always gave me was Johnny the Greek. Michael, look at Johnny the Greek.
Yeah.
He's 21 years old. He works from 6 to 8, and he's already got a car and a house. Why must you go to university?
Okay.
You've got this business.
So it also wasn't necessary for you to study.
My father said, listen, why do you want to go and study, and why do you want to go and stand with a tin and collect money at the rag? I said, Dad.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But in any case, I always felt it's something that I was interested in law, and so it was really my own pursuit to study law and I really enjoyed it.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it, and those were great years for me and things.
Wonderful.
And so I never really had, politics never ever entered my mind. I was never a political person, not on campus.
Interesting.
Never understood it. And also regarding I wasn't really a bold young man. You know, I was always a leader at school, but I was a leader because of actually my soft skills, not my boldness. So when I say my soft skill, being very strong on relationships.
Yes.
You know, and so I was always, call it everybody's pet. You know, I was the poster boy of the headmaster and of the teachers, and everybody
loved you.
I was a relational person.
Yeah.
You know, everybody just, and so as a result, I never needed to be bold and things. But later on, I realized I can use it. You know, I mean, use it because people are following you. Now, what do you do with all of this?
Yeah, of course.
And so, and then I studied law and things. And then it was a very beautiful occasion, which obviously is by a long story, which can't go into, but it was very immediate. So I was working for the family business for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then on the 23rd of December 1993, I had a supernatural encounter where it was a long story where I felt God coming into my room, and it was sprinklers in the garden and things. And I heard the sprinklers, the sound, Esther 4, Esther 4, Esther 4. And then I realized, but what's this Esther 4, you know? And the bottom line is it was the book of Esther, verse 4, go and possess the land for such a time as this. And I stood up next door to my bed, and I felt just like a coin drop in my spirit. It's politics. It was the most amazing thing. And I phoned my father that night. I said, listen, I've got some news for you. I went the following morning to the business and I said, I want to resign as a director of all the companies. I'm going to start a political party. And they said, Michael, a political party?
What?
Which political party?
Out of nowhere. Yeah.
Nowhere. And I said, no, we haven't. We've got no leader. We've got no name. We've got absolutely nothing. And so I was very blessed to meet Kenneth Meshew.
Okay.
And then we started the ACDP, African Christian Democratic Party. And the bottom line, and that's what's so beautiful about it, is how important obedience is in your spiritual walk.
Amen.
That really taught me so much, because 4 months later, I was sitting in Parliament. And
4 months after that?
4 months.
That sounds crazy. Like, is that even possible?
That's crazy. It was not. But then my father said to me, he called me in, and he says, you know, Michael, we all laughed at you. We didn't believe in you, but you can fake a lot of things in life, but you can't fake obedience.
No, you can't. Sure. That's for your father to see that and say that. That's quite powerful.
That was really incredible.
Wow.
And then I was 10 years in government, and I had my father off until today. He even says to me, he says, you know, Michael, because I was 34 at that stage. He says, you gave your best years to the government. And I said, no, Dad, you don't quite understand. The government gave me my best years, you know.
Why do you say that?
Well, I just want to encourage the viewers again, Heinz, that to be called to be a statesman is an honor. Yeah. And to serve your country is an honor. But you must understand that there's a secret. It's a calling. It's not something that you can decide on. Yeah. If you're going to, you know, lick your fingers and say, waar gaan die wind? And you're saying, you know, what should I do?
Yeah.
But things like nursing, teaching, politics is definitely a calling.
And you had clarity. I mean, you had an encounter with God showing you the way.
I
so it was very
know 100% that I was called to governance. I believe till today I'm a statesman. I believe 100% till today that I love this nation with all my heart. I understand it. I've definitely got a supernatural eye for what's going on.
Wow.
I've definitely got a ability to be able to stand in the gap and to see what God's plans and purposes are.
Wow.
And I absolutely treasure that position and that calling. Definitely.
That's amazing. I remember the first time we talked about these things, that what I took away from the conversation is you had so much positive things to say about our nation and your heart for this nation. But your experience in that 10 years in Parliament, it showed you something about the system. Are you willing to just share about that? How you saw that there's only one way to reform, and it's to completely have a new way of governing the nation. Is that still your stance?
No, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, look, because you understand, you've gone through the privilege of, I was chairman of the party for 7 years. So as a result, you saw a lot of the mechanics, the inside workings, and only once you've been in the belly of the beast could you be able to criticize it or understand it, you know. And so as a result, the one thing about our political system is that we have a political system where you vote for a political party, and that political party nominates who represents you to go to government. And so as a result, you as the voter haven't got the direct say. It's like you giving a power of attorney to somebody to govern your business.
Some entity.
And
and they can appoint anyone.
They can appoint and do what you want to. You don't know who those people are.
Yeah.
And
you know the figurehead, but that can also change.
Well, you only know a flag and the figurehead, because the figurehead changes all the time. It's just a flag.
Exactly.
And a lot of policies and principles which also changes.
Sure.
And you don't know the character of the person.
Yeah.
And so even inside the political party, there's a will, because the political leadership, they choose people that will keep them in leadership, you know, in the inside track.
Yeah.
So I very much believed in direct elections. We have to get to a stage where South Africa is divided into constituencies, and where you can nominate your person to represent you. So
just define a constituency for those who may not know how that works.
So constituencies like Stellenbosch, you know. So at the moment, you've got just the Western Cape when you vote. So Stellenbosch doesn't come in. So what happens is a political party, whatever that political party is, can nominate somebody from KwaZulu-Natal to be your representative in the Western Cape.
Is that how wide it is? But what about wards? Isn't that what wards are for?
That's now local government election.
Okay.
So you must remember now, this is national and then the local government election. So what I'm trying to do is very much what local government is where I'm saying now for national election, you must have a constituency, say Stellenbosch is a constituency. And then the political party must say who is going to represent them in Stellenbosch. They must put a name and a face.
Yes.
And say now Thuli Madonsela stands in Stellenbosch, even as an independent.
Yes.
Then all the political parties need to put up a person that they believe can be credible enough to beat Thuli or to be better than Thuli. But now at the moment that doesn't happen. And that's why even the standard and the caliber of the political representatives is not up to what it should be. Because there is not a muster of very strong people that they need to compete against. And the political parties don't put up people or need to put up people. They just want to fill up the numbers, you know. But in any case, it's been a 6-year journey, as you know. We've won a lot of court cases, and I want the viewers to be excited because the end of May, the electoral panel is going to come out with a new electoral system. And I really believe that what we've set out to achieve, to have direct elections in a constituency-based system where the voter can take back his power and nominate his representatives, will happen in this country. And it will change the destiny because it does give us an opportunity to choose people that we respect their faith, who they are, their value systems.
You know where they come from, and you kind of literally know where they live.
You know everything,
Okay, so let's backtrack a little because you now referred to something that some may not even be aware of, and that's that I remember speaking to you and hearing that someone drew your attention to something quite important, that our constitution says that any citizen can stand for parliament, but that the Electoral Act says that it has to be someone from a political party. And then you did something about that. What was that?
Heinz, maar jy kan goed onthou, nee. Well done. No, so it's, a friend of mine did tell me that if you look at the Constitution, Section 19 says that every single person can stand for public office. It's a human right.
Yeah.
So if you want to stand, Heinz, or anybody wants to stand, they can stand for political office. Unfortunately, the Electoral Act that governs the elections says you must belong to a political party.
Yeah.
So there's a conflict there.
Yeah.
So it means you can't actually, unless you are forced to belong to a political party.
I mean, step number one, that means someone wrote law that they should have known was against the Constitution. So it actually should have never been written. But then it also ran for very long, and no one noticed.
Nobody noticed.
But then someone noticed.
Yeah. Well, the big thing is it's again an act as obedience, because as she told it to me, as she said it to me, I knew that this is a crusade.
Something you have to do.
I had to do it.
Wow.
And so it was a 6-year, very hard,
I can imagine, because you had so many uphill battles.
Well, you were alone, because people, you didn't have a great following. People saying what you're doing, and yes, I'll know it, Veni, hundreds of thousands of things. And also in my legal experience, I just learned so much, because even with your team of advocates, you have to be ahead of them. Because one day they're sitting with murderers, the next day they're sitting with litigation on commercial stuff. So they're not engrossed.
You're just one of their cases.
I'm just like this one case. They just have to articulate what I think, but it meant I had to be ahead of the game.
You needed to know exactly what's going on. And luckily you have a legal background.
Well, luckily I was totally passionate and committed to the cause.
Yeah.
I was totally engrossed by it, studied it, knew it, took part in every single hearing, took part in every single 3 years that it went through Parliament, looking at the laws, criticizing it. And it was an outstanding process. And
can I ask you something? Just knowing that this is something you have to do, but getting so much resistance, what advice would you give anyone that is in a position that's similar to that, where they know they have to do something, but there's so much resistance? How do you keep going? How do you get up every day and keep fighting that fight? How was it for you?
Yeah, I think the big thing is that, I don't know why, Heinz, but I'm not worried what people say. I'm really not worried about what they say, because what they say, let them say, because I always come from the angle maybe they don't really understand. I never blame them or criticize them and say, how dare you. I think it's they just don't understand.
Okay.
And so
is that a skill you learned in your 10 years of politics, or were you always like that even before that?
I think my character is, and this my wife will definitely tell you, I'm very much non-judgmental. Okay. So if somebody walks past me and they don't greet me and I know them very well, I immediately say, ek wonder wat nou aangaan. I immediately, in my head, my framework says, I'm sure they just had a bad day.
Yeah.
So
instead of the alternative, which is I'm offended,
I'm offended and what gaan aan. And even if somebody says something bad at a luncheon or something and they react badly, I'll immediately say, just a bad day. So I don't know why I'm like that, but
I was referring more to the fact that you said you're not fazed by what people think of you. But that must be difficult. For most people, they live by the fear of man instead of the fear of the Lord, if they are believers. So that's just something that was always part of your character, you would say. But I'm sure it developed even more when you were in politics, because you must have been, have experienced so many different kinds of conflicts and resistance and even backstabbing, and I can't even imagine what has happened there.
Yeah,
you develop a thick skin, is what I'm kind of trying to say.
Yeah, you develop a thick skin, but it doesn't mean that you don't get hurt. In the sense is that I think in my early years in politics, the racial degradation really affected me a lot.
Wow.
Because I definitely didn't understand why they would judge me so much, you know. But I want to definitely say something, that in my lifespan now of 68 years, I've never, ever in my whole life been judged because of my faith.
Wow.
Never, ever.
Interesting.
Never, ever. people have always shown the utmost respect. I went to a dinner party last week from Germans, a great German, powerful family. And I laughed at them. They introduced me as, this is Holy Michael. And the other person that was a business person, that's Business Michael. So
you have a nickname.
No, so I just, from my point of view is I'm really proud of my brand.
Okay.
I'm really very proud of my brand.
All right.
And I've really never been persecuted about my faith.
Amazing.
Ever.
Okay, but back to the legal battle of getting this thing turned around where any citizen can stand for parliament. You said it was a 6-year battle and it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
What can you tell us has already happened, and what can we look forward to in that space? And because that already had an effect on our recent elections, right?
Yeah.
That already had an impact there.
Yeah. No, so the Electoral Act had to change.
Yeah.
So as you know, the Electoral Act, and that took 2 years to do. And so we got a new Electoral Act where we now have 3 ballots, because I was fighting for independence to stand, because now the whole law that had to change is to say, but everybody has got the right for public office, so you must create for independence to stand. So now independence can stand, which I think is absolutely an outstanding thing.
That's a massive win.
Massive. But
Well, I just want to say well done and thank you. I think most South Africans don't even know that you and your team fought for this and won a significant battle. So well done and thank you.
No, it is. And the second thing is, you must remember that we had now the 3 ballots.
Yeah.
And because of that, it also changed that we've now got a government of a GNU, because the ANC couldn't get the majority.
Which is a massive win. That's the first time they went under 50%.
That's exactly.
Yeah, so well done. I'm sure that was one of the directives, or one of the ideas is to get to that point where you can shift the balance, right?
Well, the big thing is about that is minds, and that's really a person's amazing how you look at your life and think, but God doesn't work in numbers.
Okay.
If you look at our political system, they always say you must be part of a political party or part of something big, I really believe that one man can make a difference. And I also believe that one with God is a majority. If God is on your side, you must just go. Just believe in it. You don't need to look for big numbers. Definitely not. And that's why also with a church, I'm really following you with Love Key, and I'm very excited with what you're doing. But I think a person must be very, very careful that a person doesn't try and lose the authenticity of the church because you're wanting the big numbers and the big,
measuring success by numbers rather than sticking to what you were called to do.
So just this morning, one of the things I do early in the morning is I follow Angus's thoughts for the morning, And today, amazing, he was just saying he's celebrating 5 years of his everyday message. He hasn't skipped one single day.
Wow.
Not one day.
That's consistency.
In 5 years.
That's amazing.
And he says today that message goes all over the world, and he's got no idea of the numbers that of people that are reaching. Now, I know that how many people I send it to every day, And so God's world is a different world.
Yeah.
It operates differently.
His kingdom is different.
It's a system that's different. It's really different, and I think we must really try and understand, we must understand that.
His way of doing things?
Yeah, his way of doing it, his system.
How do we do that?
I think you need to just be authentic with what you believe. Just be authentic to what you believe God is telling you. Don't force things. Just be authentic, real, and really focused on His glory and His name and giving Him all honor. And look, it's His job. It's not ours.
Yeah.
So we're just instruments.
So what is next in this process that you are fighting for this? What are you guys busy with right now? And what do you think can we look forward to for the next round of elections?
Yeah, so the electoral panel is going to come out with a new electoral system that they going to propose.
Okay.
We've done all our submissions already. That will be in May.
All right.
And then once that comes out, then the new electoral system will have to be promulgated, another electoral act. And then for the next national elections, I really believe we're going to have a constituency-based system. 50% will be constituency, 50% will be your general your general numbers, and I believe it will totally then change the whole political terrain.
Sure.
Definitely.
What do you think of our government of national unity at the moment?
Well, I want to say something just before that. Hans.
Sure.
I know. The only thing is that we need to see, it's no use having a system, but we don't have the people.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I'm busy doing now, we've got a school of government, and we have to start training and equipping people that believe they are called to statesmanship.
All right.
To be trained and equipped to be leaders.
Yes.
And
which is part of your heart for building in this nation. You've got a heart for nation building, and this is part of that initiative, right?
That's exactly that.
Yeah.
So the only thing is, I'm not a proponent of a person that's baking cake and then all of a sudden decide to go to politics and now they must now lead.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those proponents.
Okay.
I really believe God can train and equip you overnight.
Yes.
But I do believe in that we need to train and equip leaders.
And some people are statesmen, like you say.
Yeah, but so if anybody wants to be a political leader or believe to be called to politics, start training and equipping and looking at programs that can equip you for it. And don't just think, no, hoe moet ek in die politiek inkom and go and start at the Students' Council or, I think you need to be trained.
How does your School of Government work? How can people
we've got
get involved?
It's just got different programs in different parts of the year. For instance, we're going through a lot of training programs now to train councillors because next year is the local government elections.
Okay.
So... Can you stand?
I know you want me to.
Very badly. I'm one of your big proponents to stand.
I should say to the listeners, if you think I should go into politics, you must do a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I'd love to know what people think. But I know you've told me that.
Well, you've got the legal background, but you're a bold person. And so you've got.
I really do love our country.
Yeah.
I really do, and I think we have so much potential. One day maybe. I don't know if I'm waiting for God to give me that release. But I remember after you started telling me that, I felt led to watch that film Amazing Grace about William Wilberforce.
Yeah.
And it really moved me.
Yeah.
Because he was called to both. He was called to ministry and to government. And I was like, oh my word, what is happening here? But yeah. But those are the kinds of people we do need to stand up in our nation, and you guys want to train them, right? Yeah.
Well, all I'm wanting to do is, if a person says to me, Michael, I believe I'm trained to politics, or a parent says, listen, I really believe my child's got a political spirit, or a pastor says, I believe there's somebody in the church that's got a political spirit. You must push them, you must really encourage them. Yeah. Because if a person's got a good musical talent or a good rugby talent or sporting talent, they get trained and equipped.
Yeah.
But politics is a gift. It's a talent,
It's actually more the gift of governance, right? Than the gift of politics, or what would you not agree?
I mean, it's both. Statesmanship is an interesting concept. Funny enough, and I really mean it, Heinz, when I first met you, you'll recall that I invited you to come because people can recognize a rugby talent or they can recognize a musical talent thing, which I can't. I'm sure you can recognize a person that's got a beautiful voice or musical talent.
Yes, I think I can.
I can recognize a person that's got a political spirit.
Okay.
And
right.
And I really think you've got it. I think you've got a lot going for you and you'll do exceptionally well in it. because not only your passion, love for your country, but because of your values and because you're prepared to fight and die for your values.
Sure.
You know?
Thank you.
And that's part of what politics is about.
Yeah.
It's your conviction. And
what do we say to people that's like, yeah, Michael, I hear you, but I only have negative connotations with politics and politicians. Why would I want to go there? I mean, it seems like you're going to be attacked, your reputation, your background is going to be upended. You know, why? It's such a dirty business. You know, what would you say to someone that knows that they have the calling and the gift, but they are resistant to going because they don't think it's going to be easy, or not that, I mean, when you have the gift, I'm sure you won't just go for the easy, but you hear my heart. Like, I think politics has a bad rap. And how do we change mindsets about that?
Well, I think that's where I think when I spoke to people who are not informed, I had 10 years in government, but the truth be that I've suffered more political challenges and not nice situations in business, much more than
oh, really?
Much more than in politics.
Okay.
And so politics is because it's a bit more public, maybe, but business can be very cruel.
Wow.
And people, business has also got its systems.
Yeah.
You know, and the system isn't always very nice, and people aren't very nice. You know, and maybe there's some bankers out there, but I always laugh at my father, and I don't know if the people know, but we're 5 boys and we all work for my father. So.
Yeah.
But in any case, my father always says, boys, there's one advice I want to give you.
Okay.
Every morning when you wake up, you go out on the terrace of your stoop, you look out, and you say, the bank is not my friend. And then you go back inside. You know, so...
the bank is not my friend.
Yeah.
The bank is in business. Yeah. They make money out of me. They're not my friend.
The bank is not my friend.
Not my friend.
And you go back inside. So I'm just saying that because you know that that's a system on its own.
Yeah.
When it goes well,
yeah,
your biggest friend.
Yeah. I can relate a little bit with the music industry and television broadcast, because when I got out of Idols, people had this picture. This is one of I mean, you talk about people just don't know. I mean, I had it all the time. They just don't understand how it works.
Yeah.
So they would ask questions like, so how are your contracts going? And I'm like, what do you mean by that? No, I mean, you've got a contract with Idols, you've got a contract with Mnet, and you've got a contract with... I'm like, no, I don't. I have a record deal with a record label. And they're the only ones that have a vested interest in me now. And they're like, but isn't Mnet going to do this? And I'm like, no. Mnet is in the business of making money by selling advertising. They happen to sell advertising on Idol, so that's why they're doing it. And they're going to do it for as long as it makes money.
Yeah.
They're not here to make my dreams come true. Yeah. They're here to make money. And the quicker I understood that, the better it went for me. And it's kind of the same
exactly
thing.
What I'm saying.
Just understand how the game really works.
Yeah, it's a system, and it's the game. You must know the game works.
Yeah. As long as you understand it. Yeah. That's amazing. So if we can talk about where are we now as South Africa. We've got a government of national unity. There is a lot of pressure on our government at the moment because of the decisions they've made that have upset the current US government. We have just lost our ambassador to the US. There seems to be contentions between the DA and the ANC about our budget. There's a lot happening at once. I don't think the news in South Africa has been this busy in a long time. What is your take on where we're at? Is the GNU working? And what do you kind of predict is going to happen in the next year or to the next elections?
Yeah, I think our political landscape is very fluid. And when you're working in fluidity, you can do a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Firstly, I think the GNU is the best thing that's ever happened.
Okay.
Because it's really trained and equipped us to look at a multi-party dispensation.
All right.
And why do I say that is in a transitional government, it's always good to have a multi-party because you've got all these different voices that can make the country great. And it's not only one voice.
Okay.
You know? So I think there is a transition of understanding each other and how the system works. And so I'm not so worried about the budget that wasn't approved and what's going now, because they're going to work it out and we will have an approved budget. They're not going to approve the budget as it was announced. They've got the privilege in the finance bills and all that to change a whole lot of things.
Okay.
But I think it's a constructive process.
All right.
I really think it's a constructive process. But what I'm not very excited about is that there seems to be a push on the national program of the ANC, and they're choosing to follow the BRICS nations, the East, Russia, and all those nations, and excluding the West.
Yeah.
And I think that's the wrong positioning for our nation.
Yeah.
And that's causing a whole lot of problems. And I can honestly tell you, Heinz, that we came into this new year with great expectancy, a lot of projects.
Yes.
Everything was working. And all of a sudden, the Trump era came in and everything has just changed. Very quickly. People are even stopping projects, you know, and you can see it now with our rand. I mean, it's just really all chaos. And I'm very worried about it.
Okay.
That because that's problems with job creation, investments coming into this country, and all the things that we were looking forward to, you know. And I believe, and I think that's where I criticize the budget. I don't criticize the budget for what they try to do to make it work and balance out. But there's no major shake-up of economic incentives or an economic plan to give us a vision of getting out of this thing. It's just putting out lifeboats. You know? And so as a result, I'm really, really concerned. I'm from a business perspective, I've seen too many things, red lights now, which wasn't there even a month ago.
Wow.
The red lights are starting to come out, and I think our nation needs to do something very quickly.
If you were in a position at the GNU to make a shift and to guide them in a direction as to what should South Africa do right now, what would that be? What would you advise them to do right now?
I would give the economy a huge bullet to say, anybody that invests in the country for 5 years, you don't pay tax. I would say that you need to get, some huge incentives to bring down the interest rate by 2%, do some very huge economic surprises.
Okay.
To rattle that cage. And to talk about how we encourage investors to come into this country. And then definitely I would immediately say, from today, we're scrapping the BEE.
That would be huge. Yeah.
If you want to invest in this country, you don't need to get a 30% partner. I would scrap it immediately.
Yeah.
You know, what I'm trying to say is really drastic.
Yeah.
Some drastic missiles have to come in.
Okay.
To push the economy.
So your position is more alongside how do we fix the economy than necessarily our diplomatic ties to the US and other nations. So that you think that's the first point of departure is fix the economy.
I think you must fix the economy.
Okay.
I think you must make that's where your focus area must be.
Okay.
And your sound bites to the exterior world. Obviously, our ministers have to learn a lot about diplomacy, and obviously our diplomats. Rasulu, I know extremely well, definitely overstepped the line.
Yeah.
But I do think that even I don't like it when some of our ministers say, but America's nothing to us, and we supply them with gold.
It's just unwise.
And we are an important player in this economic landscape. Guys, wake up, rather be reaching out and say we're wanting to reach out to all the nations.
Yeah.
We're wanting to be a team player. And that's why even you'll see a lot of changes now with Russia and Ukraine. We have to talk peace. We cannot. Don't you think wars are mad, Heinz?
Of course. No, it's so crazy. But it's, I mean, the major conspiracy theory for all, since I can remember, listening to these things, is that, because wars make money, people keep pushing wars.
Yeah.
And I mean, how sad is that? That someone profiteers out of others' misery and death. And I mean, the numbers from the Russia-Ukraine war is just sad. It's just tragic how many young people are dying. It's just dying.
Gaza, Lebanon, all these countries. I mean, it's total madness.
No, it should end. Yeah. But I don't know if you are willing to speak about Israel, Palestine, the whole situation there. But wouldn't you agree that the South African stance about that situation is one of the major reasons why we are in the boat we are in?
No, well, definitely on the American situation it is. It was one of the catalysts of why America said, well, if you're going for Israel, we're going to, we believe it's the wrong stance, because there's more human rights abuses in South Africa than what there is in Gaza. I mean, more people are dying in South Africa than in Gaza. So, I mean, and also from South Africa point of view is I really believe we have to respect Israel. I mean, I'm a huge respecter of Israel.
Yeah, me
too.
You
can imagine.
I also believe that is, we have to have that position. And for me as a Christian, it's a no-brainer. But just even from a geopolitical point of view, it seems like it's not wise to have such a strong stance, against them, that you would even take them to an international court. Like you can say we're against what they're doing in Gaza. I mean, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But then actually going, and then you have all these conspiracy theories about it's actually not them, it's Iran.
But
is there any truth to that?
Get out of that?
I think we just lost a bunch of money and we ticked off the wrong nations.
I mean, we just lost. I mean, I don't know of anything we gained.
Yeah.
We might have gained from a lot of individuals said, well done, we're fighting for human rights abuses, and South Africa is a perfect proponent to fight for human rights abuses because we went through it and all. But it gained us nothing.
But I mean, I don't know what your stance is, but I think it's because there wasn't the human rights abuses that they alleged. It just wasn't there. It wasn't to the extent that they were alleging it is there. And it wasn't. You can't call it genocide, because I mean, how can you call the nation that was the victim of genocide committing genocide? It's just crazy to me. But that aside, it was just a really unwise move, I think.
Well, I think that's why it was just misunderstood, and there was an agenda.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of people are talking about it was because Iran funded it, was going to give money to the political party in South Africa, and that's why it all happened. But a very, very, very sad season in our life, definitely.
So, but our position with the BRICS nations versus our position with the US, how should that be handled right now? Do you think, what is the best solution or diplomatic approach?
Look, I think BRICS could have its benefits for South Africa. So BRICS per se isn't wrong, but it mustn't be with the exclusion of the West,
Yeah.
So I think we...
Do you think there's a way to make it have a balanced approach?
I think they need to look how they can balance it out. More countries coming into both BRICS and things, but the articulation of the messages are definitely getting worse.
Yeah.
And so as a result, it mustn't be BRICS against the West.
Yes.
So I think that's where it's now forming, and I think that's what's wrong. And but America's also not doing it well, because America's coming out so aggressive with these tariffs. They're forming the world to form polarization.
Yes. Okay.
And so, but I think the theme of our discussion really revolves around misinformation. I'm not sure I understand what Trump's methodology is with the tariff war. I don't quite understand it, because it's making the commodities in America more expensive for his own people, you know. I do know with steel and a couple of things they could benefit and things, but I'm not 100% sure of where they're on their way to.
Okay.
And so as a result, I feel softer on myself that I said, one day, hopefully, the penny will ring to say, oh, now I understand.
Okay.
You know, but at the moment, I've got no idea about the tariff war.
Well, I mean, the rhetoric seems to be we America first, but the response may not line up, like you say, in every instance. But I mean, that's from listening to him and those who work for him now, that seems to be what they are using as the reason why. And they feel like nations have been taking advantage of the United States for a long time, and so they're taking back, you know. Whether that's right
exactly
or wrong, that seems to be what's happening.
I definitely think the America First thing is laudable. I think there's nothing wrong with it. I think a lot of countries are now moving in that direction.
Yeah.
You know, their countries first.
Yes.
But I'm not so sure that the tariff war will create America First.
Okay.
You know, for the people living in America. You know,
All
so
right.
I don't see how the numbers are going to work.
Okay.
And so that's where I'm struggling in my mind to understand it.
Are you also, what do you think about them pulling USAID funding from South Africa? And the reaction to me from our politicians is interesting. Like, we hate America, but we want your money. Yeah. It seems to be the reaction. What is your stance? Do you agree in the sense that we should take care of our own people, or do you think that was a wrong move from the United States?
Look, I think it's I've got mixed feelings about it, because on the one side is that I think that there is a humanitarian problem, and you can't just pull it, and now millions of people are on the ground, no food, and you're hearing all these horrid stories.
Yeah.
I think there can be a transition period, allowing countries to start gaining up momentum, how they can start looking at medicines for whatever medicines they would, HIV and a whole lot of things, give them an opportunity to look after themselves. But I definitely understand, why must one country save the world?
Pour billions into another nation. And I think if I were them, I would also go, do the billions we send actually end up where it's supposed to end up? You know, with our country having, unfortunately, this reputation for bribery and corruption, how many people could have been helped that weren't helped?
Yeah.
And of course, it's abrupt, it's hectic. I'm sure there's many people who are affected by it. But I think probably the reaction, sadly, if I'm playing devil's advocate, how much of the reaction is, well, my kickback is now gone, or my off the top that I normally take is now gone. But yes, there are people suffering as well. So it's a very convoluted thing.
I think the big thing is, but look, I think the big thing is with new leadership, you must give them a transitional time. And I think the world is been shaken.
Yeah.
And I definitely think, I think that's what political leadership is about. And I think that, for instance, Trump's pendulum has pushed the world to move in a direction.
Yeah.
All the nations are now moving for self-sufficiency, more Germany first, this first. They all going in a way of more accountability and responsibility. And so,
which I think is a good thing. What do you think?
Very good.
Yeah. Did you listen to J.D. Vance's speech at the United Nations Security Council?
No, I didn't listen. No.
It was quite something. He took them to task. He was criticized for it, but also there seemed to be a little like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Let's take responsibility, and I think there are some. You can criticize some stuff, but there are some good things happening. That I see a conservative groundswell of people wanting to return to some form of healthy Christian-Judeo values to our civilization, which I think maybe not all the means justify the end, but at least the end is better than what we were heading towards in the previous American administration. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I definitely think you're correct. I don't think there's any political leader that I know of that could have shifted it so quickly than what Trump could do. So, and I really think it's a good direction, Heinz. I really think for our Judeo-Christian values, for what we represent, for accountability, a sense of family, the values are definitely there. And I really think it must be encouraged.
Yeah.
I really think that's definitely how I feel.
All right, so let's get to solutions for South Africa, where we are now. You're a nation builder. You want to see new young leaders come into the fold. How do we take this thing on? There's the practical side. We have a system of governance, which, if I understand you correctly, a large part of that is flawed and needs to be overhauled. And at the same time, we need to go, okay, we are in Africa. We have a government party that's leading right now that is, in essence, socialist and communist, but operating in a republic that seems to be a capitalist free market system, but they're pushing towards the communism thing. There seems to be a plan. And if I've listened to a few people talk about this, there seems to be phases to the plan, and they want to still achieve a socialist environment, but that cannot be a healthy end for our nation, from where I'm standing. So, what would you like to see happen as a nation builder? The young new leaders that we will hopefully raise up, where can they lead us to? And what could that look like? Is harmony and true diversity, unity and diversity possible for South Africa? And if so, what would that look like?
No, I think that's a good question, Heinz. I think the first thing, exactly what you surmised, that I would say is I believe it starts with our constitution. I believe it starts with our electoral system, because governance is all about your leadership. It's like a board of a company.
Yeah.
You need to have the right leaders to govern your company for it to perform. So I'm very much an ardent believer in creating a system that can work. And we've come through 30 years of we know now what should work, not work.
Yeah.
And I think we're getting there. So I think those are some of the big building blocks. I think the other thing is building very strong civil activists and civil activist organizations.
Just define what you mean by that.
So civil activist organizations, one of the big things why our country is partly better than Zimbabwe and of that, because we've got a lot of the civil activist organizations that are non-political, like the Ahmed Castrada Foundation, the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, the all these different civil movements that represent certain interest groups.
Okay.
Whether it's environmentalists or whether it's all that. And then partly where the biggest vacuum in our country is where I come in, is that the church has been vacuumed, because the church does not see it get involved in civil activism.
Okay.
So let me just explain that properly. So what happens when you get submissions to the Bella Bill, or you get submissions to any of the big bills, the church's voice is not there. You'll have freedom of religion.
Which, they've saved us from so many things.
They are
amazing.
More than outstanding. Yeah. More than outstanding.
Yeah.
But it's not the church that has come in with its voice. And the church needs to look at a way how its voice can be heard.
Okay.
In a civil activist way, because the church is extremely powerful.
Do you believe in separation of church and state, but with a church that's vocal about values? Or do you think the church has an active role to play in statesmanship?
Look, obviously I believe in the separation of church and state, but not of God and government.
That's an interesting statement.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the big thing is
That's so good. Just unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
No, so what happens is I often say to people, it's fine for environmentalists to be in parliament. It's fine for liberals to be in parliament. It's fine for communists.
All kinds of lobbyists and
all
whatever.
kind of,
yeah.
But it's not fine for Christians to be in.
Yeah, what is that about?
How does that now?
I hear you.
So Christians
Yeah.
can't be there.
Yeah.
So
And I guess even people of other faiths are in parliament.
definitely.
Yeah,
So the big thing is you cannot separate God and government. So you need God's voice in that. And this is another long story, but I can honestly tell you that I sat in parliament where I felt a godly inspiration in certain speeches I have to make or certain wisdom things. And if you're a Christian and you don't believe the Holy Spirit can give you discernment or operate there, then how does it work?
Yeah.
But you need a somebody in there to be able to voice it.
Exactly.
You need Christians in government.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much an ardent believer in Christians in government.
Okay.
I'm very much.
But those who are called and like they have a gift, like you said.
Well, they called, they trained, they equipped, but they're bold about their faith. They're really bold about their faith.
Important.
I think it's very, very important.
All right. So we have these people and we build towards a healthy system.
So a system of a transitional system where we sit around. So that's why one of the things that I'm very active at the moment, which I'm glad I can talk about now, is a national dialogue.
Yeah.
It's amazing how if you engage, even in a family situation or a church situation, or a board level where you can openly talk about what are we going through, where we are on our way to.
Yeah.
So the national dialogue has been on the agenda for a while now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
No.
so there is a national dialogue where it was sort of promulgated by Thabo Mbeki.
Okay.
And then the president supported it last year. And then even there were questions now in Parliament, when are we having our national dialogue?
Okay.
And Paul Mashatile says he just doesn't know when we can fit it in because we've got the G20 and we've got all these things. So
what is the national dialogue? What is the national dialogue?
So the national dialogue is where all political parties, churches, civil activists. It's like what we did in 1993. With the trade grow, but the
Bosberaad.
No, it's a boss, but the big debate that we had before we did our transition government.
Oh, okay.
We had it at at the airport at Jan Smuts. But in any case,
I was very young. I wasn't into politics back then. I was just affected by it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but it's a national dialogue where all representatives get together and have an opportunity for, say, a week to dialogue up what's the future of our country.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
and is it actually a civil conversation or are people screaming at each other?
No.
Honourable member, shut up.
No, it's very much
a civil dialogue.
Civil dialogue, and it will be in tracks, and they'll have different
That's
people
amazing.
Talking about. No, and it's so important, Heinz. And I really believe the national dialogue is one of the main agenda items that must happen.
That sounds like a very positive kind of start to a healthy change.
Yeah,
it's when we can have proper conversations. I hear you, you hear me. That sounds healthy.
Definitely. And what are we going to do? Where are we going to and things? And so, but also include a whole lot of the next. I'm very much an ardent supporter of the young people to mentor them, train them, expose them to this type of dialogue. And very much believing that we must be good custodians to hand over the baton of a country that is really working. It will never be perfect, but working in positive directions. So I think if we start with our Electoral Act and the national dialogue, training and equipping leaders, having schools of government to train and equip it, letting the church play its rightful role in society, civil activist groups to be serious about what they're doing. I really believe that. And then we need to start coming out quite strongly about our foreign policy, of our positioning, that the world is our oyster. We would love people to invest. Make it more feasible, easy for them to invest, not too much bureaucracy, not so many restraints. I think those are
make it attractive. South Africa should be very attractive to the international markets. Why not make it more? It makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
So I would say some of those are some of the key building blocks.
What you said you're 68. You are still very much active and busy and working hard passionately for on your calling. You're still obviously running businesses, but you're also involved in this fight for the Electoral Act. With your, let's call it your time that's left on this earth, what do you hope to achieve? What are your big dreams that you'd love to see happen, that you're still getting up in the morning for?
Well, look, firstly, I'll have to start with my family. I really want to be remembered as a great husband and father.
Sure.
I really do. I think I could achieve a lot on the outside, but if I fail as being a husband and a father, then I really feel I've failed. Then I definitely want to develop my character in a way that God has got a smile on his face, to say, well done, good and faithful servant.
Sure.
I think that's very important to me. I'm really adding wood on my fire on my personal relationship with him. Really striving to one day, hopefully, before I go, say, ek het jou stem gehoor. I still haven't heard his voice, but I would love to.
But you have heard his voice in different ways. But I hear what you're saying, the audible voice.
The audible voice.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I wanted to leave a legacy, a generational legacy of things that I can say, I've spent everything in my years here to leave something behind.
Sure.
I really want to leave things behind that are legacies that can grow and can... we've started so many schools, so many churches, so many different things, and that they can grow. I mean, started ACDP, look at what a wonderful political party it is, and, a whole lot of other things, churches, School of Governments, started Cornerstone University.
You're involved in that? I didn't realize. Okay.
So I was rector there for 10 years. I took it from a little missionary college to
That's amazing.
To a university today. But a whole lot of things, just things that you can leave legacy. And I think if you really want to make me proud, I would want nobody to know I'm behind it.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
I really would love to know that nobody knows it's me.
Leave a legacy and people are like, who did this? We don't really know, but it's awesome.
No, I think that's right, because I think it's all godly stuff, it's not in your own strength.
Beautiful.
So.
That's amazing. Wow. It makes me think of Psalm 112. It's like a life verse in my life. It says, praise the Lord, blessed is the man who fears the Lord and delights greatly in obeying his commandments. And it says how blessed this man is. He's got a beautiful family, he's respected, he leaves a legacy, he doesn't fear bad news. And it's just you can just see all these wonderful characteristics, and I see that on you. I see that on your life, and may what you just said be true, and I'm sure it already is, but may it even grow more. So thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. It was a wonderful conversation, and may God bless you, your family, your businesses, and all your plans for fighting for our nation to be the best it can be. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Heinz. And also just thank you to you for your heart for the nation. I remember our discussions when you didn't know which way it must go. And I'm really excited about your future, about leading the church. your heart, your praise and worship, your gift, your love for Christ, your boldness. And also I can definitely see you stand out with Aletta and your beautiful children, how important family is to you. So I think we're very much kindred spirits. I think even in our discussion today, in your viewpoints, I think there's a lot that we aligned in, which I think is really beautiful and encouraged. So I'm also encouraged by you. You're one of those great young men that I'm watching very closely. And may God also just continually bless you.
Thank you so much. Awesome. Well, I feel like we should end with a prayer for South Africa. Sure. Lord, thank you for our nation. Thank you for people like Michael and many others who are standing up for what's true. We just pray a blessing upon our nation. And we pray that you will guide us and lead us, raise up those young people that love you and want to live for you and take our country from where it is to where it can be. We pray that in your mighty name.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Michael Louis. May God bless you, and I hope you'll come back again so we can have another chat like this.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the In HeinzSight BoldCast. I trust that you learned something and feel a little bit more bold than before watching it. Please remember to subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so yet. Hit that bell button so you know when the next video comes. And please like the video and share it with your friends. We also want to invite you to leave comments and questions so that we can know how you are experiencing these videos and this channel. We are so grateful that you're part of our community, and we look forward to seeing you back here. Once again, thanks for watching, and remember, boldness is contagious.